Hey everybody, it's Joel from the Board Game Mechanics. Your home for board game stuff, I guess. Anyway, for all the subs out there, thanks for watching. For all of you who aren't yet subs, maybe think about it. Anyway, we're looking at Edge of Darkness today. I hope this is something you guys want to see. We're gonna get right to the table and get some. What is going? Okay, I'm going to the table. This is going to be one of those videos. We got a lot of stuff here and not a lot of time to cover it. So this won't be one of those videos where I give a how to play this game kind of overview. It'll be these are concepts in this game kind of overview. And then I'm going to give you some final thoughts on it. One thing I'm going to just tell you right now before we even break into it is every video I've seen of this so far has the board in like a horizontal placement like this. Mine's no different, and it's because of just how things are set up and how hard it is to fit on a table. I am going to try and like maybe, I don't know, it won't be very good use. Our TV screens and the orientation of this board just don't work very well together. So without any more talking, I'm going to get right into setup, some gameplay stuff, and then we'll get back into the studio where I can give you guys some final thoughts on this one. So before I even get into the gameplay too much here, I'm going to reference in the gameplay video that I will show you how everything goes in the box, but I'm going to just show you right now up front here. You have all these manuals. So I've got the expansion in here, but there's also just this player book. There is the expansion guide, the solo, and then the main rule book here. So then you pull this out and here's your main board, and it's pretty small. You can play with just this board, but then there's the two sideboards in there. So then this is how everything fits in the box. So let's just take a real better look at this. Okay, so here's all the stuff in the box. I'm going to just kind of show you how I store it all, and I think it works out really well, actually. You get your bag of cubes in there, and then this is your dice tower, and it breaks into 3 pieces. Then I have all the player boards in here. So these are the player boards, and then the sideboards are in there as well, just tucked in. And then in this box right here, this is like basically a filing cabinet, and I'm not going to pull these all the way out, but it has all the tiles that you're going to use in the game in there. And then between them are your cards. This box is actually wide enough that you can stick the cards in like a landscape, but I think if you do that, it's going to be a tight fit in some of the spots, and it'll be harder to get them in and out, so I do it like portrait style. I have people's player tokens in there, so I played with green and purple most recently, and so I've kind of weeded out some of the Kickstarter parts that I don't use every time I play. They're kind of like special occasion stuff. So really your player components are only that little bit there. So you can just tuck all your player pieces down in here. And then let's get this up here so you can really just see it. Down in here, then I have this deck of randomizer cards. And then the other deck is right here. This is the deck that's basically for like solo play. And then I have a couple player reference cards, but then the cards, the base starting cards I have down in there. I think you can see that. I have them set like portrait mode, so I have enough room to store all the player parts in that little box as well. At this point, I know they're probably going to come out with more expansions. It's going to get tighter. And then in this component over here is where the miniatures are. So the miniatures aren't even featured in this video at all, but they're nice. This is like a first player marker and then a round tracker. I did have those on the table in the video, but these are, each player is basically going to get a set of these guys. And then they have those little rings that you see in here. You can drop the rings on their feet so you know which ones are which. They suggest you use those to show who's been trained and who hasn't been trained, which could be a use for those. And then we have enough room down here to have these little bins that were on the table that hold the currency in there. So everything just kind of tucks in there, and then there's a scoring pad in here too that you can use. So big box, all goes together pretty nicely though. Beautiful art. All right, let's get back to the table here. First thing we're going to do is put the boards on the table. And so one thing I should note real quick is that we have these little sideboards here, these extension boards. And these boards, while they do make the game nicer to have the card stacks away from the actual locations, putting the card stacks on the locations and then also using the locations to place your agents isn't the end of the world. So while I had this grand, huge board set up there, we could really honestly take these little sideboards off. There's one on the top as well, and reduce the footprint of this game without it impacting the game too much. But if you've got the table space and this thing is really table hungry, you might as well do it and enjoy the big grandeur of this game. So we're gonna put the table on the ground on the table. Put the board on the table. Let's try that. And then from there, we're going to go ahead and start doing the next few things in setup, which include, right off the bat, you can just put your 3 kinds of currency into their bins. This is a Kickstarter edition, so I'm not sure exactly what's going to be in the retail edition, but some of the stuff in the Kickstarter, and I'll get into this in the final thoughts, some of the Kickstarter stuff is just really not that essential. But in the Kickstarter edition, you do get these plastic tokens as well as like some cardboard ones. This is kind of like goodwill or influence that you can have. They're two-sided. And the fact that they're two-sided is really critical. There's some money, which you use for different placements and things like that. And then we have basically these prestige, or I forget what the name of them exactly is, but really what we're trying to gain in this game. And from there, the game really does come down to this. We have this tower up here. In this tower, there's some baddies in there. And those baddies are going to come and fight us if we don't go fight them first. So it's really like a back and forth. I want to go kick their butts, but they want to come eat our people. So I'm trying to get my militias around and things around so that I can go hunt them and get the opportunities to go hunt them before they come hunt me. And anyway, let's get back into setup. The other thing we're going to do in setup here that's really easy to talk about right off the bat is we're going to take these locations. So let's just take a look at this one. That one's not that interesting. Let's look at the watchtowers. So the watchtowers are a location. We're going to put the little sideboard out. That's going to become basically a place for worker placement, really is the way I think about it. There's a bunch of these locations. So one of the neat things about this game is that you have if you have the expansion, I think you've got around 40, maybe more than 40, upwards to close to 50 maybe, different locations where you can put these little sideboards. And there's a bunch of different scenarios that you can play. And each of them does feel a little different. And then you can make your own custom scenarios. So it's like being able to play in a game system, but then there's a bunch of sequels to the game with this variable setup stuff. So that's going to keep the game really fresh. But every one of these has like a kind of a set of icons, and that mean different things for what they kind of add to the game, and a number, which will help for storage. I'll probably get into how this game is stored at the end of this because it's just a beast to store too. It's a lot of game in a lot of ways. So we put 10 of these little sideboards out for worker locations. We always start off with the same basic citizens. So this is a basic citizen card. I'll bring this up here so we can see it. And there's nothing that's been sleeved in there yet. It's translucent, or transparent, I guess is maybe a better word. And it shows a few symbols on it. And it's going to give you a benefit over here of some kind. But then there's also this cube thing, which is like basically by activating this person or moving this person, it's threatening to the people out in the blight, or the creatures out in the blight. So that indicates how many cubes we're going to drop into that tower in a couple turns. So that's the very basics of that. As the game goes on, we're going to have characters that look more like this. They're going to have additional pieces in there. And then I want you to note on this one real quick, right off the bat, you can see the art for the middle of this card very clearly, but then you can't see the top art near as well. And that's in real life too. That's not just on camera. So as we get more layers in these cards, if you played Mystic Vale, you're probably pretty aware of what I'm talking about. That as those layers start adding up, it gets more and more difficult to see what's going on in these cards. It's not terrible, but I mean, you can just see, and then this would be a fully filled out card. So as we're drafting these cards in this game, we're going to get lots and lots more stuff and more options to play. So it's a card crafting game. If you aren't familiar with card crafting games, Mystic Vale is another one. Custom Heroes is another. They're really good games, but I think that this game is really the game that was burning in the heart of the creator, that he wanted to really create this game. John DeClaire I think he just really wanted to make this game. From what I understand, he wanted this game to be the one that was made, and they said, man, that's too ambitious. I don't know if we can make that game. Well, with the success of Mystic Vale and Custom Heroes, they thought, you know what, let's give this one a shot on Kickstarter. So it got made, and this is it. And it's just a ton of stuff. So like, I think I'm circling around talking about setup just because the setup of this game is pretty intense. So I don't know. Enough procrastinating. Let's finish. We put our currency out. We put our sideboards out. Everyone gets their starting setup. Their starting setup is on a player board. So let's take a look at this player board. So here's one of the player boards. Worth noting, I think you can see that these are recessed little pockets, which are really nice. And this is even recessed here. So things that are Kickstarter exclusives in this that you're seeing are these little plastic player tokens. Those are kind of cool. They're just kind of undefined little tokens that are useful for if you want to kind of track out the sequence of things you wanted to do. You could like put them in number order, or if you're trying to just remember what you've done or haven't done, they're good for that. We have the 3 different kinds of basically currency. We have slots for them, and this is our defense value here, and that's going to earn us points at the end if we can keep that high enough. We're also going to be given a bunch of cards, and then these are like kind of like card. These are kind of like they're going to make it so we claim a. Oh man, this is not enjoying focusing on that, is it? These are like basically going to be something that these little inserts are basically something that's going to let you claim a neutral card for your faction, which is kind of important in this game because it means that cards are going to be coming back to your guild hall more, and it's going to give you more use of those cards basically. So this is a card right here. Let's look at this card here. Let's see if we can get it to focus. This is just a focus nightmare. I'm going to show you how this works, how we build this card. So this card started its life with me as Deidre Trevor Rowe Citizen. Wow. I probably mispronounced that pretty poorly, and that is embarrassing a little, but they have the benefits we talked about earlier. Well, then I draft or I pick these additional roles or additional citizens, and I just tuck them in. So this card goes from this. I take this additional thing, and I just tuck it in, and it now has 2 pieces to it. And I can add a third. You could even do a third up here if you wanted to cover up the original. There's a lot of rules about tucking. So then the other piece too is I want to show you this. As we make the card better for us to use for its benefit, we're also adding to its blight power too. So the way I think about this is that when this card if it were to come up in the tower, now it has 2 chunks to it. It's because basically these 2 guys are starting to hang out and are becoming like friends maybe, or something is almost the way you could think about it. So they both will attack together. It's not like it's one creature, but the creatures are connected, they're bonded, and they'll attack together. So you have to defeat both these creatures when you go to attack them or fight them. So you start off with a set of cards, you start off with a set of those banners, and we're going to go from there to try and get into gameplay a little bit. Let's talk about this tower now. This tower, throughout the game, we're going to get cubes. We talked about how we get those from basically the upgrades on the cards. So sometimes you'll end up with 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 cubes in your threat tray, and those are going to come out at the beginning of your turn, and then you're going to add new things to it during the course of your turn. But what will happen is there's a prescribed amount of threat that can stay in each of these trays. There's 3 sets of blight creatures or whatever you want to call it, and so let's say that we're playing a 3-player game. We're going to let those hit. I believe it's 8 before they're gonna trigger. They get enough aggro that they're gonna come attack you. So what happens is I put these cubes that I've accumulated up here in the top of this thing, and they come out different places. And so that one just hit 8. So what's going to happen when it hits 8 is the most colorful or the most present color in each of these trays is going to be attacked. With the exception being on ties, both people are going to get attacked. And on black, if black is even tied, everybody gets an attack. So when they attack, when those creatures attack you, this is kind of an important difference to know. When they attack you, your cards really are pretty well useless. Your battle strength isn't going to do anything, but there are placements on the board where if you put enough agents in spots like the watchtower or the city watch, they're going to let you retreat those agents back to your guild, or let you know, like have enough warning ahead of time maybe, or I don't know what you want to say thematically for it, but they're going to allow you to defeat those beasts, or at least have them not defeat you and make you lose some of your defense value. So by having them attack you and then having people positioned right, you're going to be able to fend off their attacks and come out of that basically unscathed. And so that's going to be really important. It's a big part of this game. But then the other piece too that's going to happen is you can go and hunt them. So when you go hunt them, your battle strength is going to really matter. You're going to look at getting big rewards for hunting them, but then also you get to it's almost like you think of that saying where it's like whoever delivers the news gets to own it. Like I would rather go meet them on on their turf and fight them away from all the innocents and go fight them out in the darkness. So if I were to do that, I could go and fight this guy. Let's say before I drop those cubes, I pulled him in for combat and I fought him. Well, he has, let's see if I can get this to focus. Again, this is a focusing nightmare because of all the just translucent stuff. They have, you know, four power there combined between them. And then they are going to give a reward of 3. So this would be something where I could go fight them for this value, at this value. And then I would hopefully, you know, defeat them and then get the rewards listed there. Where I'm trying to get those crests basically as a way of getting rewards. The other piece too is, let's get it focused back on there. The other piece too is that when I fight that guy and defeat him, I get to remove all these cubes out of there. So if this guy was getting ready to come fight me anyway and I wasn't prepared for that, I took the fight to him and I was able to keep from getting attacked myself. And then we put a new creature out there from the bottom of this pile. Hopefully it's something a little weaker. There's only one card left there. So that's a general sense of the game, the attacking and the fighting. But then what we do to better prepare for that is going to be kind of a huge deal and really what makes this game kind of neat. So I'm going to go ahead and see if we can get a better view of this board the way it's intended to be viewed and kind of get an idea of the regions of the board and how things work a little bit here. So through the power of editing, let's bring up a static picture here and we'll have it highlight as I'm talking about different things. I think that'll be better for this. So these sideboards, we already talked about them. I think they're nice. They add to it because then you have more room for these agents. So worth noting that in the game, we have miniatures that came with this game, but these little cardboard, two-sided cardboard chits, I think actually, for the sake of filming this, certainly work better. But I think for gameplay even possibly work better than the miniatures do. And the miniatures are fun and they're really cool and they add to it. So if you've got someone who's a real Ameritrasher and they like to play with minis, the minis are cool and they look great and they're not really a huge hassle. But the gameplay, I think, feels a little streamlined when you just play with the chits. And that's going to be one of my final thoughts is about the Kickstarter edition. So hang on for that. But anyway, there's areas on all these for us to put agents out. And you can see there's some agents out, purple and green agents out on this board that are going to do different things for us. And we'll look at a few examples of things that these positions do. But they're basically different. It's a combination of a set of cards, kind of almost like Dominion, but also like a new worker placement location for like a worker placement type game. And so that's going to be a really big part of the game is that these 10 tiles are going to be changing out every game. We also have then right below that is where the cards for them are stored. So on our turns, we're going to be taking these little translucent slides and putting them into our cards. We're going to be crafting cards, just like the game is called, a card crafting game. So we're crafting these cards and they are getting better by us by sliding a new component into that card every turn. Then we're going to take our hand limit of cards, and they put the words hand in quotation marks because really you aren't going to be holding these cards that much. You're going to be laying them down and using them almost like, I feel like I use these almost like the side player boards. Like I lay them out and then I put my little player tokens on them and kind of plan out my turn on that. And so I plan out my turn, I do my actions. I'm going to put things in different locations to make me more powerful against the monsters. I'm going to try and gather approval from different entities in the town. I'm going to try and do just all kinds of different things by going to these, again, those 10 locations, placing people out there, but then also gathering strength, gathering resources with those cards. So I play those cards out, do my actions, and then I put them into the discard pile. So here's the discard pile right here. The discard pile is really, this game weirded me out when I first heard about it because I heard that there's almost this shared discard pile and then you're drafting other people's cards and it doesn't feel like you own this thing of your own when you hear it that way. But then once you start playing the game, you start to understand, like, we're all in this together. We're all fighting this blight together. So what's good for one guild is good for another usually. And you do get benefits. So like if someone that's more aligned to your guild, a part of your color, goes to another color or another player and does work for them, you get paid. So it's not the end of the world. You get a benefit from that. So you want to make your cards as attractive as possible so you can gather. It's like a passive way to generate money. But then also you also, when they leave that guild, they remember whose guild they're in. They come home to you and they go to your discard pile. Your own personal guild hall discard type pile, not the general discard pile. And then as we as we have the start of the rounds happen, before we do any of those actions, before any of that, we're drafting cards to get up to our hand limit. And our hand limit is a really interesting thing. We start with 3, but there's places in this game where you put agents to get more, whatever you want to call it, in order to increase your hand limit, which is a really cool feel and like a nice thing. You want all these cards, as many cards as you can have. And actually, if you own enough cards in like a 4-player game, there's times where your guild hall, you might pick up cards in excess of your hand limit if you've been really active at trying to make the cards more affiliated with your guild. And that feels really great. And that's a really cool early game strategy to try and get as many cards of your type available so that they're coming back to you all the time. And that you may not get as many choices in drafting, but you're going to have more quantity. And if you know your cards are good, you don't mind that you don't get to pick some things. So we're going to basically draft these cards. When you don't want to take one of the cards, you can do what this is right here. You put basically one of your influence markers on there and take the next card to its right. So it's a familiar mechanic where when you don't take something, you put a piece of currency on them. And then when you do finally draft this card, you get to take the influence with it. But it goes in the fact, you flip it over. These basically are 2 kinds of currency in one. But you'd flip it over to its other side where it becomes, I think it's called like influence and honor. And if it becomes that honor side, then it basically it counts towards in-game scoring. And so you want to gather as much of that as you can too. But everything in this game, it just feels weird and it's hard to describe, but it comes together really, really well in the final product. And so we're going to keep playing this through 8 rounds of basically us drafting these cards, getting our hand limit of cards, then using our hand limit of cards to do actions, which really involve putting agents out into spots on the board or trying to use our agents that are already out by pulling them back home to go do things like hunt blight or to do things like generate resources for us so that we can do more things later. But really it all comes down to us trying to defend ourselves from the blight and go out and hunt the blight and then try and get victory points at the end of the game. And it's a really, really, really neat game if you take it for what it is. And so I think that I'm not going to be able to explain this game much better than this. It's just a really hard game to try and explain because there's so many cogs coming together, working to make one machine, that it's really neat and it's really cool, but it's really hard to explain. And it comes across in every explanation that I've seen as a really convoluted, confusing game. And I don't think I've done a much better job of explaining it than others have, to be honest with you. But it is one of those games that I'm just going to tell you, I acknowledge, even in my own explanation here, it's hard to really understand how all the gears come together, how all the cogs make this thing work, and then how, it makes a really nice machine. But I assure you it does. And I'm going to get back into the studio now, and I'm going to give you just my final thoughts on why I think it's a great game, why all this stuff coming together is good, and just kind of give some disclaimers on a few things in this game. So let's get there now.
Yeah, that's hilarious, actually. No, oh man, this guy, he's a good guy, actually. You wouldn't have thought it, the red eyes or whatever, but he's a good guy. So, anyway, that was Edge of Darkness, and I'm gonna apologize because, man, this game is hard to explain. It really is. And, like, if you look at any other videos of it, it's just hard to talk about how all the parts come together. And I hope I was able to get you some idea of that. Anyway, we're gonna go talk about, like, gameplay stuff now. Anyway, I'm going to put this up top here. This is going to be called Stuff to Consider, okay? Stuff to Consider. This is stuff that I've been married for, I don't look that old, I hope, but, I've been married for pushing 20 years now, okay? And I love my wife like crazy. She loves me. But there are things where we have to be gracious towards each other. There are things where we have to accept our love and give it without any kind of conditions, even though she knows that if I've eaten the wrong foods, I'm gonna fart in bed. And I know that every time we go to a big city, she's gonna want to visit an IKEA. And we can love Edge of Darkness, but it's one of those long-standing relationship things where I've got to go, okay, these are things that we got to acknowledge. We got to say, I see you, I acknowledge your existence. But then move on from them, and then we'll consider the game after that, okay? So the setup time on this game is enormous. The teardown time on this game is enormous because you've got to do all that sorting. You've got to do all that unsleeving. You've got to file things away. To put this game away takes quite a while. To get this game out takes quite a while. There's just so much sorting and filing. And this is a wonderful beginning of game day game because you can have it set up and ready to go when people arrive.
or it's a wonderful last game of the day game because then people can go home and you can put on a podcast and listen to it while you sort this game out and put it away. Okay, so it's a behemoth. It's a huge beast. It's got a lot of setup time. The cards, I'm putting foggy cards down here because you know how it is when you like put like a bunch of transparent things on top of each other. They're not perfectly transparent, and so it gets foggy over time. So like when you get that third layer in there, sometimes it's tough to right away see what that one section of the card that's farthest back is. It's not hard, but it's like something to consider. They don't pop. They aren't vibrant looking, and you just have to accept that as a part of the game. The game takes a while to teach, too. There's a lot of learning to teach. So you've got to, when you teach this game the first time, and then every successive time, there's going to be some time up front that you got to do this. But the game takes a while to teach. If no one's done a card crafting game, it's going to take a real long time. If you've played the other card crafting games and worker placement games, then it's not as long, but there's some teaching involved with this game. And then even if the teaching stuff, the initial teaching is done, then you're going to have to talk about all the placements because there's so many different placements in this game and understand how the different placements might synergize. Maybe do some explaining of that. The tower mechanism, the dice tower that shoots the cubes out different ways, is something you're going to have to teach. The ideas of defense versus battle strength, that you can go fight them in their territory and get these benefits, but if they come fight you, you won't get those, but hopefully you can survive with 2 different extra currencies. And then understanding how you flip those tokens over to have them be like influence or honor, basically. And all of this stuff is going to take a while to teach. It's going to take a while to get it on the table. It's also something that I'm going to say this. I have the Kickstarter edition and I'm thrilled to have it. And I'm just absolutely thrilled to have it. But I've got somewhere around here, I've got a Ziploc baggie full of stuff that is just, it's Kickstarter exclusive stuff that I don't use in this game because I don't, like even the little plastic markers for the planning out your turn, I don't think those are super necessary. The plastic coins are cool, the little plastic markers and all the other plastic bits in there are cool, but you almost have to put both the cardboard and the plastic together to have enough tokens for a 4-player game to really be able to satisfy people's needs for it. The player boards are awesome with that recess stuff, but like some of the components in this game, they just don't feel like they're needed, and they feel like it's extras. So if you're looking at, if there's a retail edition of this game that comes out at some point that doesn't have the miniatures in it, it doesn't have the extra plastic bits in it, that's fine in my opinion. The Kickstarter stuff, the miniatures are just, they're not necessary, and I almost feel like in a way you can streamline your gameplay by not using them. So because you have to take these little bases off and on them, and I mean, I don't know, you could basically not do that and just leave them on the side of the board, I guess, in most games, but it's extra setup time to get them popped out of the holders too. So I feel like they talk about the difficulty of producing this game. I think a lot of that stuff, that's the above and over the top stuff, could just go away and it wouldn't harm the game. So, and you are paying for that stuff with the Kickstarter edition. So something to consider, that you may not use all that extra Kickstarter stuff. The expansion is very cool though, and so I will say that the expansion adding even more stuff that's kind of quirky and off the wall a little bit, that's not that real upfront basic stuff that you get in the game, is cool. So anyway, that's the stuff that I'm going to say you need to consider when you look at this game. So that said, I hope you're still with me. I hope you didn't turn this off because I love this game and it's a great game. And so we're going to get into why it's great, why I love it. But you got to accept with that love, you've got to give a little grace there for those things, okay? So no other games like this game. That's the thing that I keep going back to with this game. This game is just completely unlike any other game I've played. And so when I try and explain this game to people, it's so hard to explain. It's like, well, it's Lords of Waterdeep, but you actually get to control your people. It's Dominion, but there's actually stuff that happens. You don't just build things. It's Mystic Vale, but they completed the game. It's just so many different things. It's Ascension, but it's got more meaty gameplay to it. I don't know. It's just so hard to really say it is because it's none of those things I said, but it's all of those things I said too. And the other piece too is I really want to encourage you to just kind of, I don't know, maybe you've seen some people do like Let's Plays of this game or like try to explain the gameplay of this game. And it's like me, I can't explain the game that well because there's so many parts that come together in this one package, but they do it so beautifully. They all come together so well, but I can't explain them individually and then how they come together near as well as they do just in the game. So this is one that, it's that game of like the sum of its parts, it's way greater than that. I mean, like, and so I love this game, and I just wish I could better
explain how the gameplay works and how the parts come together to you guys, because it's very good. I mean, very good. There's no other game like it. I mean, there just isn't. And it keeps coming back to that for me, that it's something new in the world of board gaming. And almost every other game I've been able to play, it's Twa in space. It's Arkwright meets 18XX. It's this, it's Great Western Trail, but on the moon. I mean, like, we're able to explain how games are based on other things that are happening. This one's like, you could kind of say it's that card crafting system, but that's not even at the core of this game. I mean, it's a huge part of it, but it's almost like your cards become like an action selection tableau, and you're planning out your turn based on these, like, it's almost like your cards become a secondary player board, and it's just the worker placement aspect of this game is way more present, I think, than the card crafting game, in parts of it at least. And then the drafting is cool, and that whole, like, you put your cards into discards, that feels like it's going to be so bad. It feels like it's going to be like, well, why am I even crafting these cards? Why am I even doing this? But then you start to understand, because they're going to give me benefits, and those cards are going to come back to my guild regardless. So it's worth doing, So, I mean, like, that shared discard pile sounds like something that would hurt a game like this, but it really doesn't. It makes the game interesting and different, and it's just cool, and I keep coming back to that. It's just different, okay? So I'm going to move on to my next point here, which is it's a great next steps game. This game isn't super heavy. It's not. It's something that if you're playing that medium weight stuff with people, you're playing like you're kind of Lords of Waterdeep or Champions of Midgard kind of games with them, this is a great next steps game. This is something that you could, like, almost flirt with, like, the Gloomhaven type heavy or, like, heavier games yet, with just, there's more decision making in this, there's more going on, but it's so novel and cool and exciting that it keeps people's attention. And it's not overwhelming them because there's sequences and small bits that come out at once. So, and that card crafting also, like, the game starts kind of simple and it ramps up because you keep adding stuff to it. So the synergy of the cards, the maneuvering of the cards, all that stuff builds up through this game. And because it starts fairly simply, I mean, medium heavy and ends up fairly heavy, I think it's a good next steps game to get people to, like, those heavier games, those next games that you're gonna look at playing with your group. There's something for everybody in this game. It's got card crafting, deck building, it's got combat kind of stuff, it's got miniatures, it's got worker placement, it's got drafting. It has just kind of something for everybody, and it's not convoluted. They all go together and make a quilt of awesome tapestries put together. So and I didn't just say tapestry for the SEO. It really does feel like there's a quilt of things coming together. So it's cool. It's just cool how that all comes together. The novelty, and I've talked about this forever, it just feels new. This game doesn't remind me of anything else. The closest thing is Mystic Vale, but Mystic Vale is to this game as Selenium is to Black Angel. I mean, like, it's like a little side part of the game in this whole grandeur of this thing. So, did I say... I don't remember the name of the game, but the sideboard on Black Angel is its own game. You know what I'm talking about, guys, right? If you don't worry about it. It doesn't matter. So anyway, the accessibility of this game is going to be to many players. This is going to be something that I wouldn't play with strictly gateway gamers. This isn't something that I would play with family members probably, or I wouldn't bring this out at an office party. But if you've played games with a gaming group, they're going to be able to play it. So the accessibility is most anyone can play it. The game on this one, the theme is going to be a many people on this one, most people on this one. There's, like, elements of darkness and evil, but you're fighting those. It feels good. It feels like you're trying to make the world a better place. So I think most people aren't going to have exception with the theme of this game. And the theme is really fun, and it's really cool that you're running a guild basically to try and combat evil. I mean, that's a cool feel. The fun in this game, I'm giving a 5 out of 5. It's an amazingly fun game. There's not a ton of downtime in it. I mean, like, I don't feel like people's turns take that long. The pace of the game moves pretty quickly. It does feel like you're building something, and then it feels like you're, like, playing 8 scenes of, like, action. And those cubes, every time they drop, it creates tension, and you're like, oh man, what's gonna happen this time? And it's just cool, and you know it's gonna come around to get you at some point because those cubes don't cycle back into the bag until the bag's empty. So you know your 15 cubes are gonna go somewhere. Replayability, man, I could give this game a 6 or 7 really out of 5 because there's so many of those tiles. I don't think I will ever play through the life of this game in my lifetime. I just don't think I will. There's, like, so many different combinations. So as often as I'm going to play this game, I don't think I'll exhaust all the different combinations of tiles that you can put out there. And then there's an expansion. And if this game's a success, and I think I'm thinking it's going to be, I can't see us stopping at one expansion. So I think this is a 5+, even as it is with the one expansion that is there. Without the expansion, it's a 5. I mean, it's still a 5. There's, I think, 37 of those tiles. I mean, don't quote me on that because I don't know, but I'm spitballing here. I think it's 37 of those little like side tile boards with the cards with them in the base box. And then I think you get like another like 15 or something insane in the expansion. So, just so much stuff there. The design of this game is a 5 out of 5. And I mean, I know I complained about the components, and I complained about that the cards are translucent, but then they kind of get foggy, and I complained about how long it takes to tear up and set down. I complained a ton about the components and the design of this game, but there's no other way to do it. I can't think of any ways that they could have streamlined this or improved it. They could have made it into a video game, is what they could have done to make it more streamlined. But if this were a video game, I wouldn't play it, because I think there's something about the tactile feel of those cards and like physically watching them change and handling them and handling the cubes and dropping them in the tower and hearing that clanking sound. I just think that the physical nature of this game, even with all of its fiddly and clankiness, is just worth playing in its physical form. And I don't know how you could have done it better. So a 5 out of 5 on the design. The art is a 5+. I've never seen a game more beautiful than this one. It's the most beautiful game I think I've ever seen. It's the fantasy art in this is like, it's amazing. It's like, it's as good as any role-playing game art you're going to see in their books. It's as good as anything you're going to see. Like, it's wall-hanging quality art if you love fantasy worlds and stuff. Just the art is over the top. It's just fantastic art. Just so lovely. All the people are done so well. The landscapes are great. The ideas of darkness creeping into this. The shading. It's all just really beautiful. So the art's great in this. So let's wrap this up. Let's finish up. 4.5 out of 5. I haven't given a ton of 4.5 out of 5s. It's hard to get a 5 out of 5. This game, I think I have to give it the 4 out of 5, 4.5 out of 5 because of this. I do have to acknowledge the warts. Speaking of warts, man, I bought some chairs today. I'm going to tell you this right. I bought some chairs, and I had to bungee tie them in my trunk because they were hanging out. I bought these like lawn chairs at like Lowe's, and I took them apart, and there's a toad in there. And the toad was like, I'm thinking hanging on for dear life. But anyway, warts, like, that toad's got a story to tell probably. Anyway, warts on this game are there. I mean, I talked about it with the setup of this game. It takes forever. And the plastic in this game kind of feels cheap. It feels like children's games that I played when I was a kid. It feels like the plastic in like Connect 4 or in like the cheaper Milton Bradley type plastic in it. I mean, it's just not a high grade plastic, it doesn't feel like. But all of that said, this game is phenomenal. It just is. It has its warts, but it's phenomenal. And that's why I'm giving it a 4.5 out of 5. And I don't know what they could have done. I understand they've got to make money on this game, or at least try and come close to breaking even, which based on like the accounts I'm hearing, they aren't necessarily even doing right now. So I get the things that are in this game that I complain about. I get why they exist. I don't have a solution to how to fix them, and I understand and I'm willing to accept them as a part of the game, as a part of the package. So 4.5 out of 5. And this one is going to be, my subtitle for this one is a favorite if you can love it like it is. If you can see those warts that I've acknowledged and say, you know what, I don't mind a game that takes a while to set up and tear down. I don't mind a game that's got some extra plastic bits that I may or may not use. I don't mind a game that's going to take a while to teach. If you are okay with those things and you want just a really great game in spite of those things, man, this is it. It's a great game for sure. So Edge of Darkness, I really like it a lot. I'm looking forward to playing it for a long time. And I'm pretty positive my impressions of this aren't going to change. But I'll tell you the way to find out if my impressions do change is check out our podcast. We talk about games we played. You can find the link down in the description here. But at any rate, yeah, really good game. Really love it. And this is after just a few plays. I'm feeling this way. I don't know. We'll see. We may have to update this, but I don't think so. I think it's going to be one of those games that it's just different enough that I'm not going to be worn out by playing other stuff that's similar to it. And it's different enough and takes enough, those warts, remember, it's going to take enough for me to set it up that I'm not going to play this one every week. So I think it's going to stay fresh and new, and it's going to be a novel, cool thing to play. So anyway, Edge of Darkness, go get it. Go get it if it seems right for you. It's good. It's very good. And I don't know if you can't go get it. I freaked out about it and last second pre-ordered this for Gen Con. So I don't know if it's going to be around or not. I hope it is. It's a good game. And if it's not available, that's a shame. But it's a very good game. Try and find it. Anyway, I've been Joel. Keep gaming. Maybe you can complain my copy. I don't know. Message me. We'll see. Anyway, thanks again. Keep gaming. Check out the podcast. Like and subscribe. I don't know. Whatever. whatever. I'm gonna go find my friend. I flipped the lights on and he took off, I guess. So yeah, keep gaming.